People always wondered why Michael Jordan hated Reggie Miller so much. And honestly, it wasn't just a typical on-court rivalry. It was something much deeper. MJ didn't just dislike Reggie. He despised him. This was the one player who could truly get under Jordan's skin and push him to the edge. Sure, MJ had beef with plenty of stars over his career, but Reggie Miller? That was different. It was personal. This was about pride, ego, and respect. Three things Jordan never played around with. The story goes all the way back to 1987. A young, confident Reggie Miller had just entered the league. Still trying to make a name for himself, he found himself face to face with the man already considered basketball royalty, Michael Jordan. During an exhibition game, Jordan wasn't really trying. He had just 4 points at halftime. And Reggie, maybe feeling brave, decided to open his mouth. He taunted MJ, saying something like, "Who do you think you are? The great Michael Jordan? There's a new kid in town." Now, any normal player might have laughed it off. But Jordan? That was a fatal mistake. He didn't talk back. He just smiled, nodded, and stored it away. Then the second half started, and everything changed. MJ flipped the switch. Suddenly every shot was dropping. Every move was sharper. Every possession was personal. By the time the buzzer sounded, Jordan had over 40 points and Reggie had learned a painful lesson: never poke the bear. That day, the rivalry was born. From that moment on, Jordan saw Miller as more than an opponent. He saw him as the rookie who dared to disrespect him. And Jordan never forgot disrespect. It festered, turning every Bulls-Pacers matchup into something electric. The air would tighten when those two faced off because everyone knew sparks were coming. By 1993, those sparks exploded. The Pacers had grown stronger, and Miller had developed into their undisputed star. But Jordan was still king of the mountain, chasing his third straight title. During a heated game, the trash talk reached boiling point, and the two legends came to blows. Literally. A full-on brawl broke out. Fists flew, benches cleared, and everyone watching realized this wasn't just competition anymore. It was hatred. To Jordan, basketball was about respect. You could fight him, foul him, or even beat him. But you couldn't act like you were on his level unless you'd earned it. Reggie never cared about that code. He taunted, he pushed, and he smiled while doing it. And to Jordan, that made him intolerable. By the time 1998 rolled around, the beef had turned into legend. The Pacers were no longer the underdogs. They were contenders. It was Jordan's last dance, his final shot at glory with the Bulls. Indiana was standing in his way, led by none other than Reggie Miller. That playoff series was war. 7 games of pure, intense basketball. And in Game 4, with the clock winding down, Miller delivered the moment that would define their rivalry forever. Guarded tightly by Jordan, Miller caught the ball near the three-point line. Instead of panicking, he shoved MJ aside, stepped back, and buried the shot as the crowd exploded. It was chaos. The shove wasn't called. The arena went wild, and Reggie strutted down the court, pounding his chest like he just dethroned a god. That single play became one of the most infamous moments of the decade. Who else in NBA history would dare shove Michael Jordan on national television? To the Pacers, it was a statement. They weren't scared anymore. But to Jordan, it was unforgivable. Reggie had embarrassed him in front of millions. And worse, the refs let it slide. That moment burned deep. Even years later, MJ would bring it up, his tone sharp, his expression icy. And yet, what made this rivalry fascinating was that Jordan's hatred for Miller wasn't the same as his other battles. With Charles Barkley, there was mutual respect. They were fierce competitors, but friends off the court. With Patrick Ewing, it was a rivalry built on toughness. With Isaiah Thomas, it was bitter, but rooted in mutual understanding. They both wanted to dominate. But Reggie? He never earned that kind of respect from Jordan. He was simply the guy who annoyed him more than anyone else. Jordan even admitted it himself once. He said playing against Reggie was like chicken fighting with a woman. He complained about Miller's constant flopping, his grabbing, his light frame that drew cheap fouls. "He's got his hands all over you like a woman holding your waist," Jordan said. "I just want to beat his hands off because it's illegal." That's how deep the irritation ran. But here's the thing. Reggie knew exactly what he was doing. He thrived on that chaos. Every jab, every shove, every smirk, it all chipped away at Jordan's carefully built image of control. Reggie was like the one kid in school who just wouldn't stop poking you. He wasn't trying to beat you up. He just wanted to see you lose your temper. And it worked. Jordan's entire legacy was built on dominance, physical, mental, and emotional. He wanted players to fear him before the ball even tipped off. Most did, but Reggie never did. He talked back, smiled through it, and played like he had nothing to lose. And for a perfectionist like MJ, that was maddening. In a way, Miller represented something Jordan couldn't control. A player who refused to play by his rules. Every time Reggie flopped for a foul, every time he grinned after hitting a three, Jordan's frustration grew. But that's also what made their matchup so unforgettable. It wasn't about championships or stats. It was about pride. Even Reggie himself later admitted that he knew he wasn't on Jordan's level. "I don't want people to think it was some big rivalry," he said. "We weren't equals. But I loved the battles." He said most players bowed down to Jordan. He just refused to. That stubborn defiance made their encounters feel different, more human, more emotional, more real. Fast forward to The Last Dance documentary in 2020, decades after their last battle. When the topic of Reggie came up, Jordan laughed that same smirk he had in 1987 and called himself Black Jesus. Even after all those years, the memory was alive in his mind. Reggie, on the other hand, said he was hesitant to even be interviewed. He didn't want to relive those memories. That tells you something. Jordan had left a scar. It's telling that Jordan could still laugh with Charles Barkley or Magic Johnson years later, but never with Reggie. There was no handshake, no reunion, no friendly banter, just silence. And that silence said everything. For Jordan, Miller wasn't a rival he respected. He was a reminder of irritation that never faded. Looking back, the rivalry between MJ and Reggie wasn't about who was better. Everyone knew Jordan was the best. It was about how one player, smaller, skinnier, and technically outmatched, dared to challenge him without fear. And in doing so, he did something almost no one else could. He got inside Jordan's head. Every Bulls-Pacers game became must-watch TV. Fans tuned in not just for the basketball, but for the tension. Every glare, every word, every foul felt like it might ignite a spark. It was drama in its purest form. Two personalities colliding. The unshakable GOAT versus the fearless agitator. In the end, Jordan came out on top. He always did. But that didn't erase the irritation. It made it legendary. Reggie became the one man who could make the unbeatable look human, even if only for a moment. And that's why, decades later, when people ask MJ why he hated Reggie Miller, his answer still carries the same fire. Because Reggie was the one player who never bowed, never backed down, and never stopped talking, even when he knew he was facing a god. The truth is, Jordan didn't just hate Reggie because of what he did on the court. He hated what Reggie represented, a challenge to his dominance, a crack in his image of total control. And that's something Michael Jordan could never tolerate. Their battles weren't just basketball games. They were psychological wars, the kind that fans still talk about today because they captured what makes sports so captivating: the pride, the tension, the emotion, and the refusal to give in. That's why, even now, the footage still feels electric, because beneath the highlights and the stats, this was more than just a rivalry. It was the story of two men, one who refused to be challenged and one who refused to bow. And that's why Michael Jordan's hatred for Reggie Miller will always be one of the most fascinating stories in NBA history. Even years later, when fans look back at those fiery Bulls-Pacers matchups, you can still feel the energy. It wasn't just basketball. It was personal warfare disguised as a game. Every time Jordan stepped onto the court against Reggie, it felt like he had something to prove all over again. He didn't just want to win, he wanted to humiliate the Pacers. That's what drove him. And every time Reggie smiled, talked, or celebrated, it only added more fuel to MJ's competitive fire. You could see it in Jordan's eyes. He took every smirk, every shove, and every shot personally. What's crazy is that their rivalry outlived their careers. Even in interviews decades later, Jordan's tone changes when Reggie's name comes up. There's that same cold edge, that same subtle smirk that says he still hasn't forgiven or forgotten. It's rare for MJ to carry something that long, but that's how deep this one went. For him, Reggie represented defiance, the one player who refused to bow down to his greatness. And for Reggie, it was proof that he could stand toe-to-toe with the GOAT, even if just for moments. And that's why the footage from those games still hits hard today. You can see it, the tension, the mind games, the silent hate. The league has changed, but rivalries like that are almost extinct now. Two players willing to go to war for pride, ego, and legacy. It was raw, emotional basketball, the kind that made the 90s unforgettable. And while Jordan walked away with 6 rings and eternal glory, Reggie Miller walked away with something else. Immortality as the one man who got inside the mind of Michael Jordan.